so funny. It's so funny because initially I'm always insecure about my background because my place is so small and
you're a star. Don't worry about it. Stars don't have to. All right, kids.
Exactly.
To all the fans, here we go.
This is 2OF Entertainment.
Welcome to the Lost Dollar Business Club, where we talk about business, and not just business. We talk about what makes businesses go up and what makes businesses go down. If you're interested in businesses, this is where it is. We talk about the global economy. We talk about global politics. We talk about everything and anything business related that affects your life on a global scale as well as a local scale. And don't miss after the show, Lost and Found.
All right, here we are. Here we are again.
Live. Who knew?
Yeah. Welcome back, David DiMolfetta.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, there's a lot of excitement going on in DC, and you've been prolific in some of the cybersecurity articles recently. So the question is, where do we want to start, David? What is top of mind for you right now?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to begin, guys. I mean, you want to? I know when we were prepping for this, you wanted to talk about the plane.
Well, the plane's a big deal. That's a big deal.
From Fantasy Island, the plane. You guys are too young to remember Fantasy Island. Anyways, with little Hervé Hammershey and what's his face, Ricardo Montalban. There you go. David's like, I don't know who these people are. Anyway,
I slightly recall it.
Slightly recall, yeah.
So yeah, what does the insiders think of the plane, the $600 million flying, I guess, orgy palace that you have to carpet clean, I guess, after every flight?
I won't comment on that descriptor.
Okay, I wouldn't.
Look, the president for some time now has believed that the Air Force One that he's flying in is not suitable enough for his needs, and that when he would land in other nations for engagements, that world leaders would laugh at him. So it seems. So the idea is that accepting this plane gift from Qatar is a move to. It's an aesthetics thing at the end of the day. The problem is that when you accept a gift like that, of all gifts from a foreign country, then there are a bunch of counterintelligence risks that come with that. So when you get a plane like that, you can't just fly in it. You know, maybe if you're a billionaire, you could fly in it right away. But if you're the president of the United States, the typical Air Force One, it takes years to outfit those aircraft with the proper security controls, pardon me, and other measures in place to make sure that, well, no one's spying on you when you're in the air. You know, the Air Force One serves as a command and control center. It's outfitted for anything from a smaller crisis on the ground to nuclear war, God forbid. And so the main tension point is that the president wants this plane to be ready by this fall, which I won't take credit for the reporting here. My colleague over in the Defense One unit of my company, she had spoken to former Defense and Air Force officials who say that's going to be impossible to do. And now we seem to be in a bit of a conundrum where people are saying, well, the president wants to accept those risks of flying in a Qatari provided new Air Force One.
Yeah,
that's fine, but you run the risk of being spied on, right?
Yeah, and that's maybe part of the limit. Yeah, we can't. I don't think we as the American people can or should allow that. I mean, he's still the president serving the people, and the aesthetics. It's not a good enough excuse to accept a national security risk.
Yeah,
that's the plane.
What now, John?
How old is the plane?
The current one?
No, the one that the gift.
Oh, the gift. I mean, it's very new. It's very new, and I think that's part of it. I'm not sure about an exact number, but it's much newer than the current Air Force One that he's been flying in. Typically, they rotate them out over the course, I think, of like 5 to 10 years or so. But I'm not exactly an expert on the timing there. But I'll just say that it takes years to outfit those aircraft. to be ready for a United States president.
Right. So basically, he's getting this gift, and it's very nice because I spoke to the Prince of Qatar. And I go, listen, Lost Dollar Business Club needs a plane too, so ours is coming. I think it's a little model though. I don't think it's a big one. But he's like, oh, I'm going to fly in this. It's going to be part of my presidential library. It doesn't sound like it's going to be ready until he's not well, unless he never leaves, then of course it'll be ready. But if he does leave when he's supposed to in 4 years, sounds like this is going to be the plane's ready then for his presidential library. It doesn't sound like he's getting anything. The other question I have, is he accepting it as a person or the president? And if he's accepting it as person, doesn't he have to pay taxes on this gift?
Two great questions. He's accepting it as the president.
Okay.
Although the way the logistics and the ethics of that shake out, as you pointed out, Steve, are not entirely clear.
Okay.
You got to remember that this is a very atypical gift that he's accepting. It's one thing to get a nice state dinner, which is a consumable, and that's it. Or maybe like a small gift, like when you visit a country, like a flag or something like that, or a painting. Right. It's much different when you get an aircraft where you conduct your business at all times when you're overseas. It's a much different circumstance, and to your point, it's something to watch for. I'm sorry, your first question again.
Oh, it was about, so if he's taking it as the president, and then if for his library it'll go on official loan. But if he takes it as Donald Trump, wouldn't the IRS have to go, well, you received a gift over whatever the limit is, and you have to pay tax? Wouldn't he have to pay tax then on the gift? Or are they going to just say it's part of his presidential library, whatever? But doesn't that then have to pay tax? I'm just asking. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's a great question. Okay. I'm not sure about the taxing behind it. The goal is to get this, hopefully in a more ideal situation, off the ground, no pun intended, by 2027, which wouldn't leave him a lot of time left to be president, assuming a third term is not invoked in some way, right? I'd watch for how I'd watch for this fall to see if they're going to if he's just going to elect to take the risk and fly in this aircraft. Part of this too, you have to keep in mind, it's not just going in and outfitting the aircraft. It's getting the people to go in and outfit it. And when you work on such a sensitive platform like the systems for Air Force One, you need security clearances. You have to vet people for that stuff. This is not something that happens over the course of 6 months. It happens over the course of a couple of years at least, because you need the right people, you need the right workforce, which is literally qualified at the classification level to get the different command and control systems and other technology installed to run a country literally from a plane.
And of course, this is, I think part of the appeal for President Trump is it's been described as a flying palace and super luxury. And I feel like that's what is, no pun intended, trumping his interests in national security versus just having something that is aesthetically pleasing to his ego. So I think we got to call it like it is, and I think people are doing that, saying it's an unconstitutional, maybe even to accept it, even if they're calling it a loan. Qatar is supposedly saying it's a loan, so it's not technically a gift from a foreign government, which I think that's arguable. So yeah, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I'll just add real quick, Michael, that there's bipartisan concern about it on the Hill. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Reasons. But there are
finally, finally, there's bipartisan concern on something. So it only took a $600 million aircraft to do it. So
no, it's only 400 million, Steven. It's only 400.
It went down.
Yeah. It went down. Yeah.
I would be embarrassed then to accept it if it's not 6. Yeah. I'm sorry. You should. Now it's crap.
That's right.
You can't accept it.
The Lost Dollar Business Club's budget, as I understand it, for new planes is $500 million. So if it's 400 in this case, you guys can do it. But if it's 600,
that's right.
That's
correct.
Right.
600. It's right away we price ourselves out of the marketplace. Let me ask you this: it was in the Financial Times today. So I mean, whatever he's doing in the Middle East seems to maybe be working. kind of defense and security. We're going to build an AI center now with Abu Dhabi. The UAE government are going to put a big data AI center in the Middle East. I think that's good. But then again, I am not the national security gentleman that you are. Yeah. So tell me why that's either really, really good. I'm using Trump words now, or it's like the worst thing in the world.
I think we just had to contextualize this a bit from a timeline case. The Middle East has been a talking hotbed among folks for a while for standing up AI and AI innovation and data centers and stuff like that. Mostly because it's a part of the world where that type of infrastructure has been built on. Right, you don't just access AI systems in a vacuum. You need the proper infrastructure and data frames in place, which can go for miles and miles to process this stuff. I mean, the amount of computing power needed to process queries that we would put into a ChatGPT or a Gemini, that it doesn't come out of thin air. You need data center infrastructure in place to process that, and then you need chips as well, those AI chips, which I'm sure you guys have talked about on the show before. They're a big component of the modern day AI age. I mean, the processing data, gosh, like 10, 15 years ago, it's the demands are much higher now. Much of that attributed to large language models, LLMs. So it's no surprise. Part of this now is the president. He's early on-ish now, still in his term, and a lot of this involves planting those seeds because you want to show, just in general, for whoever you are, president, whoever, you want to show that you're engaging internationally early on, because the goal is to meet with the stakeholders as early on as you can and show that you have engagements planned, that you want to be a connector, a deal maker. A big theme of Donald Trump in general is that he wants to make deals all the time. He's always talking about deal making. You could see that in other engagements around the world right now. From a national security side, yeah, I don't want to coin it as questionable, but it's something to watch out for. I think it's the second time I used that on the show today, but it's a great point. Keep in mind that a lot of the major AI providers right now on the planet are American AI providers. And the question is, are there business units that would be carved out in these Middle East nations, especially in these Gulf nations, that would be subject to legal demands of those home nations where those business units are placed? So a big concern that we watch a lot, especially on the intelligence beat, when it comes to private companies that have stakes or business units over in China. China had, for instance, it's talked about all the time when we write about China cyber risks. China has a national intelligence law that theoretically they can compel any domestic firm or unit in their borders to hand over sensitive data about anything, the contents, the proprietary information housed within a business. We don't have that here in the States per se, because we have mechanisms in place like warrants or other legal demand mechanisms that give us some freedom. I mean, that's where the countries differentiate. But certain nations don't have that, and companies would be obligated quickly to abide by standards to hand over data. It's a legal demand. That's kind of the more technical term. There's legal demands in place where a government can compel a company to hand that data over. So the question is, if there's a business unit of a major, I don't want to single out any particular tech company, but you could think of anyone. There's a business unit on the ground in the UAE that does data center work on behalf of one of these companies, or if they're quite literally, if it's a one-to-one relationship where they provide the data centers for their own AI systems and tooling and products, would the government in the UAE require them to hand data over in a certain case? And then that's where you might get data exfiltration risks. So a lot of it is not so much of the hacking and the technical stuff per se. There's a bit of that because you have to figure out, am I encrypting the data properly? But keep in mind that a lot of the stuff is policy driven. It depends on where you are on the ground.
Interesting. Okay. I read that this morning. I was like, well, this will be interesting because I mean, we do stuff over there with AI. And I know on like certain patents that there's national security risks on certain patents. So they're like, yeah, you can do this, but you can't do that. So that's why I was interested in what your thoughts were on that, because I figured this is going to be interesting. And I know SoftBank's in bed over there, very much so.
Yeah. Yeah, the look, I mean, I'm not as stooped in this area now as I was a few years ago in my first job, but the PE and the VC firms are always looking at ways to raise capital on this stuff. Just in general, it's an exciting thing, and it is an exciting thing. Let's be honest, it's cool. Generative AI it's very cool, and it's incredibly powerful, and how far we've come with AI tools in just 2.5, 3 years, I think, since when was it? It was late 2022, I think, when the first version of ChatGPT came out. I mean, remember now in like base ChatGPT, I think you could generate images.
Yes.
Yeah.
You couldn't do that 2 or 3 years ago. So it's moving fast. So look, the behavior's understandable. I personally don't know how much, and this is just me speaking as David, but I personally don't know how much the VC firms are studying national security risks besides standard legal compliance paperwork that they may look at. But I don't know if anyone's thinking about hacking or legal demands and things like that. At least on the capital side, if that makes any sense.
No, on the capital side, they're just saying we give you $1 billion, and in 10 years you give us 30 billion back. That's what they're looking at. They don't go much past A. When it goes A, B, C, they stop at like B, maybe get to C, and then they could care less. So interesting. Guys, what else do you have for Dave? Dave, I have for the last question though. It's an offbeat laugh question for national security because you deal with the defense. So that's the last thing before you go. I'm going to ask you this really offbeat thing, but I know John and Michael have more, down to earth thing. Mine's going to be out of this world. So,
okay.
All right.
There
Try
you
to
go.
prepare myself.
I would, good luck.
That's right. That's right.
What's with
Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you the messaging. The messaging apps that these national security, it just confounds me, that we are bouncing from commercial stuff. Don't we have, I mean, an internal, generated messaging app that's secure? Why do these guys keep using these, I call them third-party software to do this? Why is it that they go from what was it that before it was Signal, then there's I think that you put tap
the Signal
message
clone,
telemessage.
telemessage.
Is the one that's generated by the government clunky, that it's difficult to? Why is it that they keep doing this? Because it just means I don't know. It just makes no sense. It's like we're amateurs, and they're supposed to be the top bananas.
It's convenient. So keep in mind that during the window before President Trump became president, that 2.5 month window, more or less, you're still allowed to talk to people that are nominated for their positions, and it's convenient to get on a Signal chat and just talk. And it's also convenient to not have to transition all that stuff over when it comes time to talk over official channels. Now, keep in mind the telemessage switch that originated from a side problem that blew out from the initial Signalgate scandal that I think we had talked about when I was on here first. So telemessage is a message archiving service. So in the federal government, you are required to archive chats, even if they're in highly sensitive environments and may never be accessed by the public. The National Archives and Records Administration requires all chats to be stored. So what initially came out of that from the Signalgate side was that when Mike Waltz added all the people to the Signal chat, the dreaded Signal chat where the Atlantic's Jeff Goldberg was added, he set messages to disappear, which is technically circumvents archiving rules. And so a lawsuit came out of that. So that's something I followed a little bit. And the idea is that the judge ruled that archiving needs to be put in place. And so what happened was that there was a scramble within the government, and not just within like the top echelons of the White House, but in various other agencies as well. There's a big scramble to make sure that we had archiving capabilities loaded in on the proper devices so that stuff could be stored. Now, there's different archiving techniques that come in through these third-party apps, excuse me. But in this case with telemessage, as we all found out, it was not the secure product that it claimed to be. And so
right, they got hacked. They got hacked with a very little effort, it turns out.
That's right. So a hacker brought their findings to 404 Media, which is another. I mean, they're phenomenal. 404 Media. I mean, they're just crushing it every day. And yeah, so a hacker brought their findings to them, and what took like 15 to 20 minutes to get around telemessage protocol, and they're able to access sensitive content connected to Customs and Border Protection. So, which also gave away that telemessage was being used in certain offices within the Department of Homeland Security. They've shuttered. My understanding is that they're still on the telemessage service is still on pause right now because it's not doing what it claims to do, and that's a problem. That's the issue with these signal clones. And look, I think you had asked earlier there are sensitive communication offerings in place. So for the Pentagon, for instance, has something called JWICS, and JWICS is used to exchange and talk about classified information. It's a secure network that's engineered, and it's been long used for a while, and updated and innovated on and built upon to secure communications for between sensitive military officials. But again, it's inconvenient to have to swap over to all that stuff when you've been talking for some months before you take your official position in the administration. And part of this too, there's been conversations raised that, well, maybe it's been all intentional, so that anything bad that comes out of this can't be pulled from the archives. I don't know how true that is. It's always a suspicion of people that watch this stuff from afar. But yeah, I hope that sheds a little bit of light onto what happened here. They didn't just casually swap over to telemessage, to the signal clone. It was motivated. It was fueled by archiving law concerns.
So basically, you're coming into the administration. You're talking with people, on a messaging app. Then you officially assume that your official role, and damn it, really, it's just such a pain. I'll just stick to Signal, and I won't use the really good app that we have in the government because it's just a pain. Is that how I'm reading it, or
that look? I can't read minds. If I were able to read minds, then my job would be a lot easier. But this is how it works. I mean, these are the problems that were introduced in this admin, and yeah, we're just gonna keep watching them.
Sure,
that's crazy because of laziness.
It's crazy.
Basically.
Yeah,
it's like it's laziness. Yeah. But you would think, and I read an article after the first issue with the defense secretary. Was telling his whole family how we're going to go invade some country, at the pub. And they were all saying they all have attaches, and all the attaches that they have, and you know better than I, all have the secure communication that they can literally go, here, talk to everybody on this now, not your personal BlackBerry is not used anymore, your Apple or whatever, your Google phone. Like, here's your Android phone. No, please feel free, because the Russians and the North Koreans want to see what we're doing. But they have somebody there that's going like, here, use this. And they're shocked that the cooler heads are not prevailing, I guess, that the kids are still running the high school. And it's like, well, where are the adults? And apparently they're firing them all, which I know we're going to talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
But they seem to be firing all the adults, and we just have kids running stuff. Am I wrong on that? Or
I can't.
Feels like amateur hour. Yeah,
I can't opine on that. But look, what I can say is that you're not the only one saying that.
Once again, bipartisan. That's 2 for 2. Yes.
Yeah, that's right.
I had to keep my job, man.
Yeah, I know. That's right. Wait, that's why the last
you,
question will be great. They'll promote
do you find that
without a problem.
you're self-censoring in this new environment? Yes.
I wouldn't call it censoring. Look, when we report, we just have to be fair and objectionable to whatever degree we can. I mean, fairness is hard to measure. Because sometimes when you go do a story, the story may make someone not look so good.
Right. Yeah.
and so it's being objectionable, like the term being objective in your coverage. It's tough to define sometimes, and I know a lot of reporters have different views and feelings about that. But at bare minimum, in my view, if you're going to write something that may put someone in a bad light, you ought to go to that subject and give them a chance to comment. A lot of places don't do that, or they seem to forget to.
Yeah.
And that's just called being fair and decent.
We have fair and decent journalists on the Lost Dollar Business Club. David, I'm glad you're here.
Thanks, Michael.
That's cool.
Wait.
Well, speaking of,
we do. Did I miss that memo? Hold
on.
That's
right. That's right.
That's right. This is not Fox News. So
no, speaking of. Oh, okay. Yeah, we were confused. Speaking of fair, I mean, what's happening with this Maduro claim that he was working with, that President of Venezuela was working with this gang. This is Trump's claim, and then the National Intelligence Center or National Intelligence Council said that that's probably not the case, and they got fired for it. Is that what happened?
Yeah, it's a little complicated. So
yeah, break it down for us.
Yeah, so earlier in the spring, there was a secret assessment put out by the National Intelligence Council that basically said that Nicolas Maduro is probably not. Maduro's the Venezuelan leader. He's probably not directing the Tren de Aragua gang to send gang members directly into the U.S. for an invasion, and that essentially undercuts or contradicts the president's claims that an invasion is happening of Tren de Aragua into the United States on behalf of Maduro. And the question becomes, it's a very weird Uno reverse case of politicized intelligence. And yes, it was put out publicly by one of DNI Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. One of her staff put out that they weren't able to produce apolitical intelligence, and that was reason for their firing. So yes, 2 officials in the National Intelligence Council were fired shortly after all this stuff occurred. For context, the actual NIC assessment was declassified recently over the past week or so through a FOIA request, the Freedom of Information Act, which, I mean, FOIAs are hard to successfully carry out these days, but when you do, I mean, they can be very insightful because a lot of people are trying to FOIA right now. So the assessment contradicted much of the administration's claims on Venezuela and Tren de Aragua. That's essentially the bare bones aspect of it, and the argument was that the argument from the administration side was that the assessment was politicized. And yet, and the big thematic element here you have to keep in mind, guys, is that for a while now, the president has been suspicious, at the very least, of the intelligence community. So when
that's been going on for a long time.
Right. When the IC was initially carrying out Trump's Russia, the Russia probe of Trump's first campaign and the figures around that, that obviously did not make him feel very happy because it subjected him to, in a bad light, and there was an underlying implication potentially that the Trump campaign at the time in 2016 was having conversations with a foreign adversary, and as you know, a bunch of officials like James Comey and others, they were put in the crosshairs of that, and for years now, that's been That's been it's for years now. The IC has been vilified by the president. That's the best way to put it.
Are there, you talk about in the article that you wrote about this issue about alleged intelligence leaks, and that Gabbard is saying that there are leaks all over the place. I mean, is that what you're hearing, and is that accurate? Are there leaks of intelligence happening throughout the organization that she has to worry about?
It's happening, but I don't have a measuring comparison to see how many leaks have occurred now versus, I don't know, say the first few months of the Biden admin or the first few months of the Trump admin. I'll say, like, I'm paying more attention to it, so there could be like accounting bias there.
Sure.
I'll just say though that in the case of Trump 2.0, a lot of unique changes are happening on the IC side that to people on the inside and to reporters, they deemed it necessary to shed this stuff publicly. So, for instance, D&I Gabbard secretly ordered the intelligence community to step up spying on Greenland. The Wall Street. Steve, I knew you get a laugh out of that. All credit to the incredible folks of the Wall Street Journal who broke that, but that was a secret order that Gabbard, directed the IC to start spying more, because we know that the president has made claims that, hey, maybe we should have Greenland. So, and there's been a bit of a push out there from the vice president and others, to go out there and survey the land or whatever. But
right.
But the idea is that there are unique intelligence developments happening in this administration, in Trump 2.0 right now, that go beyond what we've seen before. And that seems to be fueling a lot of the talks, a lot of the leaking. I don't know.
Basically because these sources are worried about what's happening, and it's almost like the leaks are their version of a whistleblowing in a way.
Yeah.
Look, that's why people in general, not just in the IC, but in throughout the government, that's why people come to us with stuff. Recently my colleague Eric and I had reported something about planned cuts in the State Department, and that got a lot of attention. It got blown up on a lot of Reddit forums, and people started coming to us with more information. And so, sometimes when you're a reporter, you have to do that. You have to do some reporting first to make more reporting happen later through people that willingly come to you. But I had 2 or 3 people in my Signal inbox, so to speak, after that story came out, because the people leak because they feel motivated to say something. They feel motivated to bring something to light. That's just the way it is. That's part of the job.
Yeah. They leak because they think they're, and I mean, this is no anything. It's just more of a question. Do they leak because they want to be, if they think they're being a patriot, or do they leak because they're concerned because they think it's going to lead to the demise, if you will, of our democracy?
I'd say both.
Okay.
Both. They can go hand in hand. I think they can go hand in hand.
Yeah. That's it.
How did you find out about the just to shift topics to also a related topic, which is the CISA budget cuts? So the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, looking at a $500 million cut to a $3 billion budget. It sounds like that's 50%. Very concerning for a lot of people.
Yes. Yes, it is. A lot of people have decried it. Sorry, you asked Michael how I found out about something, or
I was just wondering how that came about. I mean, this you quoted a lot of representatives in this. You quoted some individuals, and it just seems like this is one of those indicators that this is something that had to be brought to the fore.
Right. So for context, every springtime, the president, no matter who the president is, they put out budget proposals for the next fiscal year. So in the federal government, the fiscal year ends September 30th, right? So the last day of September, right? There's 30 days in September, right, guys?
Right.
Yeah.
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 So and I always mix up the calendar there, but end of September, that's when the fiscal year resets. So the idea is that for fiscal year 26, the president and the White House put out a budget proposal for the entirety of the federal government, all agencies you could think of. There's a budget proposal put in place. So yeah, so that 500 million figure, that was not leaked or something like that. That was put out in writing by the administration publicly. And the idea is that appropriations committees in Congress, who literally that's why they're called that, they appropriate the funds. They elect to appropriate the funding needed for these agencies based off the White House demands. They go through the budget request with officials, and they go down and they say, all right, well, this is happening here, this is happening there, this makes sense. Why do you want this type of cut here in the context of this? And that's what was going on the House Appropriations side. So I was in the hearing room when they were going through all of this. So they held an official hearing it was a Homeland Security subcommittee on the House Appropriations Committee. It's a mouthful, but they held their standard appropriations budget hearing for CISA. And yeah, there were questions thrown around about, why are we requesting a cut like this, with all the hacking and terrible things going on in cyberspace, and that's the crux of it. I mean, if I'm happy to go into this further, but CISA has a much longer history that runs in parallel with censorship concerns on the GOP side largely.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up. That's an important point, because that's the other side of the argument, saying, well, CISA was censoring social media platforms or encouraging them to go after so-called mis or disinformation.
Right. So initially, and I'm sure you guys saw bits and pieces of this in your own time, just when we were living through the pandemic, and especially 2020 early on, we were online a lot. We were like chronically online, and a lot of stuff was just being thrown around, right? And what fueled a lot of the disinfo push from CISA at the time was that you had claims about the efficacy, the efficiency, the efficacy of the COVID vaccines. You had claims about the results of the election, right? The 2020 election, which ended in the January 6th riot in the U.S. Capitol building. You had a lot of information being thrown around that wasn't necessarily true. The idea is that CISA wanted to engage with these social media companies and coordinate takedowns of that information with them. And now the other side of the argument is that, well, it's my right as a citizen with First Amendment rights to say what I want. And even if separating that out, even necessarily like that isn't true, like, obviously with the benefit of hindsight and logic, President Trump did not win in the 2020 election. That's just, I mean, you could say that he did, but he didn't. And so the question is, when you make a claim that he did, is it free speech or is it false information that needs to be taken down? And so there's a two-sided argument to this, of course. And so CISA at the time said, okay, we need to coordinate with social media companies to do these types of takedowns. But what happened was that resulted in a lawsuit, and several lawsuits, smaller ones stacked on top of that claim that CISA was interfering in the freedom of speech rights for Americans and First Amendment rights and censoring them. And that case, it got kicked up to the Supreme Court. They sided with the Biden administration at the time. That was about a year ago. But still, despite the decision, CISA has largely, over the past year and a half or so, they had largely chilled communications with social media platforms because they were too afraid of the potential legal blowback that would come with that. Despite the top, despite for the past year, the top attorneys, the top court in the entire country siding with the Biden administration at the time in a way on this type of behavior. The fact that a largely conservative Supreme Court made a ruling like that, and the fact that there have been other separate academic studies showing that there wasn't really mass censorship, it says a lot. I'll just leave it at that. But it's still become a flashpoint when you look at the administration's efforts now, the Trump administration's efforts to downsize this. I mentioned that story that a certain disinfo and misinfo focused staff have been put on leave. There's been cuts to election focus units, election security focus units of the agency. There's been cuts to threat hunting contracts, which, I mean, threat hunting on federal networks and other networks, that's not necessarily a censorship or disinfo thing. That's just kind of trying to catch bad guys when they come on prem. Yeah, so it's a defense thing. So, yeah, so understandably, there's been some questions from Congress about why these cuts are being put into place, and how is the core cyber defense agency of the U.S. going to do its job when you've invoked a cut like this? And that's the crux of the issue.
Let me ask you this: what does the Spooks or Us community think about all of this? Because it seems.
Sorry, what is the what community?
Spooks or Us, spies. Agencies that don't exist. Those three-letter agencies. That's people. Some of them you know about, and some you've never heard of. So, what does the Spooks or Us community think about all this? Are they like okay, or are they kind of going, listen? They're putting their puppet in place. We still have a job to do. We're just going to do it. And we just kind of forget to tell them. Or are they like, you're tying our hands and are getting to a point where they're like, enough's enough?
People on the inside definitely feel like their hands are tied.
Okay.
It's tough. It's tough to do a job when your workforce is reduced. Right. Former intelligence officials I've talked to and who've spoken publicly, not just to me directly, but in general, have spoken publicly. They're not happy about it. And the argument is that right now, especially with China, I think last time I was here, you guys asked me to rank the top nation state cyber threats, especially with China right now, and the Salt Typhoon telecom hacks and other incursions they made into the US. Now is not the time to be doing those types of cuts. And yeah, so I'll say too, all of the intelligence community, vast portions of the intelligence community have been offered deferred resignation packages by the current administration to leave. I think by the end of the fiscal year, I believe that's the target. So you leave now and you take pay through the end of the fiscal year, and then you're on your way out. And I mean, if you want more people in the private sector, that's a fast way to do it. And especially in places like the NSA, where these guys are geniuses on cryptography and signals intelligence. I mean, you'll be scooped up by the private sector real fast. Right. But to defend the nation on the digital front, yeah, it's a major concern. And when I was at an RSA conference, it was when I talked to people on the sidelines. RSA conference, it's a major cybersecurity conference out in San Francisco. So I was there a few weeks ago, and we had a lot of one-on-one meetings with people, and that was a major concern. The fact that the admin is creating incentives to reduce the workforce in these areas, yeah, it was being talked about a lot. It's not people are being careful publicly because they don't want to become a target of the White House right now, which is it's an issue in itself, because the fact that you have to be afraid of speaking out is, I mean, that's something many people would consider conversation worthy. Right. But yes, in private, the spooks are us, the spies, or the people who work with spies, at least I can say, are concerned. Yes.
Well, you call it the IC, and for the lay person, they just call it the spooks. So I mean, it's what can I tell you? So,
yes, the IC means the intelligence
community. Yes, I knew that. So but I'm just saying. So for the average person, they're like, I see 15 of them are starting to look up that. Like, yeah, don't worry, we'll call them spooks, and you're fine. Maybe the next time you come back, we can actually have that dialogue about, and give you time to think about how you'd have to address that. Why they're so afraid of being targeted and speaking out, like back in the day when there was Watergate and the Pentagon Papers or whatever. Going back to the other part about being patriotic and they want things to change. In this administration, it seems it becomes almost like a witch hunt when things happen. It's like, okay, who did it? All right, let's just wipe out these 800 people. And it's sort of like, oh, okay. And that may be a more in-depth dialogue or just a whole show because of what's going on. So,
No, well said. Well said. I mean, the circumstances that surrounded Watergate are obviously not the same as what we're seeing now.
right.
But you'll notice that Nixon, there were efforts by Nixon to, look into like, all right, who's talking, but there weren't prosecutorial or litigious efforts to the sense that we're seeing now.
Yeah, and now it just seems it really, like we talked about the last show, it's like we're almost in the 30s, and I don't mean the 2030s. It's sort of like like it's the old joke, we will ask the questions type of thing, and that's kind of like where we are, and it's a little spooky when you've grown up in a democracy where you kind of have freedom.
Well, at the same time, you've got the National Security Council, Alexei Bulazel, saying let's normalize cyber activity, offensive cyber hacking, basically, against nation states. So at the same time, maybe they're dismantling CISA, but the administration's also saying, but let's be more aggressive. So it sounds like a mixed message to me.
Weird conundrum, right? A lot of people have been bringing that up. How are we going to direct our cyber warriors to get more assertive in cyberspace? How are we going to work more with the private sector to get more assertive in cyberspace potentially? When we have these cuts going on, it's a very valid question, and I think the philosophy is that we can still get it done with a smaller workforce. I don't have a crystal ball. Again, if I had a crystal ball and if I could read people's minds, then my job would be a lot easier. but we don't. And part of this too is that we have to see how these things play out. I mean, a lot of these things are still in development. But yes, Alexei did make a case to normalize offensive hacking. When he had a really great keynote at the RSA conference. So it was really well done, I think. And yeah, he talked about that quite a bit. The argument is that the last administration and prior administrations haven't been assertive enough against our adversaries and
have not been assertive enough. Right.
That's right. They have not been assertive enough. Like to clarify, we have done offensive hacking, but a lot of it is
including private sector support for that activity.
Sort of. So it's hard to define private sector support. So I could be a private sector company, like a big tech company that has a contract with the NSA or with Cyber Command. Cyber Command is a combatant command tied to the Defense Department, but the person who leads NSA also leads Cyber Command in a dual hat, just for context. So I could be doing contracting work for NSA and Cybercom as a private sector company, and I may be contributing to their mission in some way, but without pulling back the curtain, it's hard to see. It's hard to see like right off the top. It's just hard to define if that makes any sense. Like I could be an NSA analyst using a tool provided by a big tech company, like on-prem at my workstation, which is helping me track a bad guy, perhaps, and then targeting them that way. So how much of that is the private sector doing, like the hacking? Maybe not quite. It depends. It depends on how you define it. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Here's we know you have.
Yeah.
Let me ask you the out of the world question. And if you can't answer it, then John, I know, has a pressing question about Nazi gold in Argentina. So we'll get to that.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
Not really. No, he's just
not really. No, he's not kidding, because John really is searching for it. So the last couple of years, there's been a lot of congressional hearings and a lot of stuff coming out. Even the Orange Man said about UAPs and UFOs. So in your reporting, what's anything? Is there like everyone said breaking news, whatever, but I figure we have like a real reporter, and it's not some guy talking out of his tuchus to get views on YouTube. So is there anything that you guys hear that you're like, well, this is interesting, or there's stuff that they talk about that it's like, yes, but we can't say. And I bring this up all the time, and I guess I'm the only one that saw it on CNN in 2019 or 2020. There was a general at a live conference where he said, yes, we have off-world vehicles, and nobody cared. I'm like, okay. So is there anything
that was a big deal? I remember that. Oh yeah. I mean, he's like on the hill. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
At a hearing,
think anybody cares that there's UFOs or aliens or there's life on planets, whatever. So do you guys hear anything where it's like, interesting. Like, yes, we have stuff, but we're not telling the public. I just figured I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, good question. So look, on disclaimer on unidentified aerial phenomenon, that goes a bit beyond my coverage.
Okay.
Just to clarify, it's a good question though, because people have gone on TV. Former commercial generals have gone on TV, and they've gone under official testimony in Congress to say, yeah, we have something here. There's a program here that's tracking this, or we've seen these things. I personally have not taken time to pursue that, just as a cyber reporter, and then as an intel reporter who, there are aspects of I don't cover all aspects of the IC. Much of my IC coverage is NSA focused because it merges naturally with cyber, and then a little bit of ODNI, which is the Office of Director of National Intelligence, which we talked about earlier. That's the office where DNI Gabbard is housed in. So my IC stuff is more focused on the signals intelligence and hacking and a bit of workforce stuff as well. But certain things like I don't know, CIA. I don't touch CIA as much. I don't touch the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency as much. And NGA does a lot of the the high level satellite reconnaissance and things like that. There's also the National Reconnaissance Office, which builds and engineers the rockets and satellites and other capabilities used by NGA. So it's a whole big apparatus. There's 18 official intelligence agencies out there in the IC. Believe it or not, there aren't just like 4 or 5. There's actually quite a lot. And then on top of that, in terms of tracking UAPs, that's also a big Pentagon and broader Defense Department thing too. It's not always just an IC thing. Pentagon stuff is not entirely my specialty. So in general, I'm trying to say I personally have not been following UAP stuff. But to your point, look, we hear things and then we have to determine how we track them down and if it's worth tracking them down.
Right.
And sometimes when we track stuff down, it's a nothing burger.
Right.
And it happens. And it's good. It's always good to verify. As a reporter, it's always good to verify stuff.
Right.
You may not get the big story, but at least you don't make yourself look like an idiot publicly. So it's always good to double check. Sometimes there's a cost to that. Sometimes you'll say, I don't feel like looking into that, or my gut tells me it's not true. When in fact it was true. and you lose out. I'll just say, yes, there are things I am running down. And there are tips we're getting that we're running down, and we're gonna keep at it. I can't say much else beyond that because a couple of things are highly sensitive, and I'm not just saying that to be an attention grabber. But
we'll have to have you back on the show when that's ready to be discussed.
That'll be a good show.
I'll move as fast as I can, but yeah, it's I withhold these things not because of you guys, but because it takes time to build these source relationships and to compromise them like that. It's just not right.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. That's why I was just saying is like in your daily course of what you do, did anybody ever say, hey, listen, my friend here from wherever 40,000 light years away type of thing? You'd be like, oh, so I'm being somewhat facetious, but so that's why. So if you ever come across anything for us, I find it fascinating. Because I would hate to think that we're the most intelligent species anywhere. So I'm hoping that there's others, or because they go, as multidimensional, blah blah blah. They go through all this, and I just kind of want to just someone just lay it out. You know what I mean? Just kind of go A through Z, and I'm like, got it, cool, thank you so much, I'm happy.
Yeah. Well, I want to hear it. I want to hear it on the Lost Dollar Business Club. Yeah.
Maybe maybe it's worth a story just to lay out where we stand, right? Maybe it's worth something.
I think people would be. Ideas. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I know that people would be interested in it. I know for a fact that people would be interested in it.
There's a ex-presidential advisor who recently died, but he did there's a YouTube video of him that he directly handled UFO material. Harold
I think I saw that. Yeah.
Malmgren. Yeah, I don't know how credible it is, but I thought that was pretty interesting.
I see that. The prime minister from Canada, the defense minister from Israel, they all come out, but they all come out when they're 90. So I'm kind of like, did you just watch like Orson Welles, War of the Worlds, and that's what you're referring to, like Reagan in his last years, where he goes, I was standing on a ship, and it's like, that's the movie you were in with the chimp. It's sort of this thing. I'm like, can you do it when you're like, I don't know, like you're 50, 60 and we think you still have your faculties, not when you're 107 and you're like drooling in a cup.
It's funny.
So that's kind of what I'm hoping for. David, as always, we know you have to go and save the world. Thank you very much. It's always good to see you. Hopefully you'll be back next month with some good stuff. And we'd love to hear from you. And so, yes, thank you so much. And enjoy your day, my friend.
Yeah, thank you for the inside scoop.
Yeah, thank you for
the course, guys.
Yeah,
always great to be here. Happy to come back, and I appreciate it.
All right. Have a great day. Thank you so much.
All right.
Cheers.
Bye.
All right, we're going to make David go to the green room so he can go do his day job now. And his
That's
day
right.
job's not to hang out with us. As much as literally with David, we could talk.
It's a good time. It's a good time.
I know. It's like he's one of the guests. There's only like a handful of them on any of the shows where you could literally just talk to them.
Just
for
keep
like
going.
4 or 5 hours. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot. It's an exciting time. It's an exciting time for what's happening in the world. And I'm glad that we have someone that we can explore those federal topics with.
Yeah, and I'm glad that the fans like him too. So it's very nice.
The fans like him, so we'll keep having him back. Yeah.
There you go. All right, well, we're going to do two things. We're going to run a commercial, and then we're going to do Lost and Found. So here's our commercial.
Get the freedom and the flexibility of remote work in the lucrative tech industry. Bend your life around the world. Bandicoot is the premier course and community for thriving in a remote tech career. Join the revolution today. Bandicoot.com, official partner of the Lost Dollar Business Club.
Ever wonder how millions vanish into thin air, or how a single dollar can make all the difference? Join us on Lost and Found, where we dive into the wild world of financial mysteries. From misplaced fortunes to unexpected windfalls, we unravel the stories of people, companies, organizations, and even governments who've lost and found millions. Lost and Found, because every dollar has a story.
And here we are. Hey, let me just say this for all the fans who are watching, whether live or rebroadcast, that we have on our channel the #1 country and western music star, Dakota, and I can't remember his last name, that we have developed, which is AI. And he is blowing up on our channel. His songs are like taking off. It's Dakota something. I really wish I knew his last name. I'll put the link below. But he is blowing up. We have him also in his own little Spotify area on a certain play. And he's just taking off as the #1 country and western musician that is all AI generated. David wrote the music. We give it to AI, and AI, or he wrote the words. We give it to AI, and AI makes it explode. And we are laughing because this is what's blowing up country and western by our own make-believe AI. So if you want to see it, there you go.
All right.
Go under our playlist, or in our channel under music, you'll find it's called music, and you can see Dakota and his music. So there you go. And we're going to put out one over the weekend. So that'll be fun for the fans if they want to, tackle that. We'll put out Sunday morning. So there you go. So there you go. So our Dakota make believe is doing better than have real people. So there you go. That's my
future. The future is now. Yeah.
The future is now. That is true. John, what do you have for us today, big guy?
Okay, I got two things for you. The first one is we found some money in New Jersey from 3M. So 3M settled with New Jersey,
right?
A lawsuit covering the contamination of what's called forever chemicals. They are PFAS.
PFAS,
yeah, they just last forever. So the settlement is for $450 million. You think, oh, that's great, but it's going to be paid over 25 years. So,
boy,
yeah, I always
good luck. Good luck.
The headline is always wonderful, but then the detail is, oh, really? 25 years? I mean, okay. So you don't. I mean, could they have paid? I think they could have paid upfront.
Right.
The deals.
It's $1 a year, John. Don't put them under pressure.
All right, and the other one is, we talk about the Department of Defense failing the audit for 7 years, and it's failed it since 2018. It's supposedly costs taxpayers over $1 billion a year because of disclaimers that the accountants come up, notice of findings of recommend, all this stuff, right? But and I always poo-hooed them, but the reality is the problem is because there's a mismatch, and this was created in 1990 with what's called the Chief Financial Officers Act, which was always well intended, but when you have politicians doing this, they don't understand stuff. It comes out the wrong way. So it was about financial health and military accountability. So rather than just asking auditor opinions, and it's a mismatch because the Department of Defense they're applying GAAP accounting to a system, or let's call it an enterprise that doesn't have revenue and expenses. It just has expenses. So that instead of asking the question of, hey, we had $5 billion to buy 55 F-35 jets, did we get them? Did the 18 billion deliver the 5 ships? And those questions are not part of the the accounting of how they're supposed to do it, given this act that was passed in 1990, right? So it's I mean, the agency is just it's enormous, right? It has 2.1 million people, service members, and 780,000 civilians, over 4,600 global sites. Managing what I think it's 850 billion in discretionary funds.
Right.
And half of the fund of the U.S. discretionary spending is in the U.S. and there's 3.8 trillion in assets, right? So that's 70% of the government's total. So tracking all this stuff,
John, they're going to get 400 million more because they got that plane now. So it's going to be a little more.
So there's a lot of discrepancies, but part of it is because the accounting, it's round into a square peg. It doesn't work, right? You're asking the wrong questions, and so I'm beginning to think that the headline is great, but the reality is we have the wrong system reviewing the Department of Defense.
I agree. That's a good thing, John.
Okay, so that's a big dollar loss then.
Yeah.
And not just $1 loss.
Big dollar loss. There you go. Big dollar loss. There you go.
It's so if we apply the managerial accounting to the Department of Defense, we'd get a whole different
a lot better off.
We'd understand what's going on, right? We'd be asking the right questions to what's going on. So I think it's a
that's good, John.
Yeah.
All right, so let's make that. John's got a proposal for Congress to do it the right way.
No, they know how to do it. They
know how to do it.
Right. SFFAAC 4, which is the Statement of Federal Financial Accounting Standards 4. It tracks outputs and is a better approach to the defense budget.
Why don't we do next week's show on that?
I don't know. It's very techy.
That's a show.
It's very techy, but it's a good point. I'll see if I can find a government accountant.
Good luck with that one.
Yeah.
And by the way, the musician's name, not to break up what John did, is Dakota Hayes. So you can look up Dakota Hayes.
Dakota Hayes. Okay.
Dakota Hayes. We made that up as well. So
yes, AI generated. Yeah.
AI generated, and it's actually like the #1 country and Western song now in America and in Europe. So go figure. I don't know what to tell you. I'm putting out more videos of them just for fun. But John, that was very cool. Maybe we should do a whole show on that, because I think that would be a fascinating show. About government accounting. I mean, and it doesn't matter if one person or 100.
Well, people need to understand it, because it's a fair point.
I agree.
It's a massive budget, a massive operation, and people can continue to complain about the audits or lack thereof, and it's because they're not even looking at it the right way. So.
Right. John, next week should be the show. That's the show if we don't come up with anything, I think. There you go.
Okay.
Look at you. You're going to be a star next week, John.
No.
John's like, I'm going to be sick.
Yeah.
All right, let me do one really quick before Michael comes in.
All right.
I'm not going to go into the Wall Street Journal article about the new shadow banking and how everyone's about to get screwed, and all the hedge funds and all
again,
how they're doing shadow banking, and they're doing, which I thought was very interesting. when they were talking about shadow banking, private credit, industry aims to
Oh, that's huge.
Investors and
huge money.
Yeah, that's huge. It's a couple $1 trillion. That's a show once again unto itself.
Very high risk. Very high risk. $2 trillion.
Yeah, a couple trillion. Yeah, it's a few dollars. A little under what we can afford to buy an airplane for. What I do want to talk about, which I thought was interesting, is an article in the FT. The United States banks, you know those guys that handled everything so well in 2008. They proposed to dial back bank rules, and they want to make it back before the 2008. So regulators are preparing to cut capital requirements that are targeting for rigorous criticism of Wall Street. So basically, you're going to have another implosion.
Another free-for-all.
Another free-for-all, but I'm thinking you're going to have another 2008 few years. It'll be interesting to see if the Trump administration's in power, if they're going to be too big to fail, or you know what, too friggin' bad. And I said this to someone the other day, wherever Donnie has his money is where I put my money, because that will be the only bank that
crypto.
No. He also has real caps and banks. And we know the banks that they're in because they're public. But I'm saying that's where I put my money, because I don't want my money in a bank that Donnie doesn't have his money, because when the system implodes this time, the king isn't going to save them. Just think about that. When Silicon Valley Bank exploded, the government bailed them out so the billionaires wouldn't lose their money. And then BNP came in and bought it at a discount, right? Because if they did, all the billionaires in Silicon Valley would be broke. There'd be no Bezos, there'd be no Tim Apple, there'd be, it goes on. So the government bailed them out. I don't think Trump would bail them out. So I'm very much wherever Donnie has his money is where I have my money, because Donnie will bail his banks out so Donnie doesn't go broke.
But will it
I thought that was interesting.
Will it occur in the next 3 years?
I think so. If they're going to, here's what's going to happen. You're going to bring back to 2008. You know, like, don't worry about if you have a surplus. Like, there's not going to be a stress test from the Treasury anymore. It's like, oh, you have $1, go ahead, loan out 17 trillion. And then it's going to be back, like, interest rates will be at 1%. You know, waitresses are going to be buying $1 billion homes on interest only, which is $6. And then when that comes due, they can't pay the principal.
Yeah,
that you're going to have an implosion again. So I think that's where we're going to head. And that's
if they allow it, if this goes through. I mean, I think cooler heads will prevail.
I don't know about
but you know what?
John.
Maybe in the end it's good, because then we'll clean the system, right? Because if we always bail out the bad actors, then we're never left with well managed.
Yeah, but you know who pays the price at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's gonna. And if
when we bail them out, we pay the price.
Well, yeah, but we don't really pay anything, John, because it's make believe. We just print make believe money, like the millionaire tax they didn't pass. It just taxed the poor people. I'm telling you. 7 billion people are going to take a picnic in America. There's 300 million of them. They're going to take a picnic one day, and no one, and part of them are the military, and not going to do shit. And we just heard from our guest, even the Spooks R Us community, better known as the IC, is having heart attacks over all this stuff. There's only so much stress they're going to take when they're going to be like, enough's enough. You know what I mean? So there comes a point where an adult in the room is going to be like, enough. Here's what we need to do.
We think so.
Yeah, Donnie's got to turn around the economy relatively quick, I think. So we'll see what
happens. I got some on a lighter note, because using it related to AI. Okay. But you've got a Northeastern University student complaining that her professor was using ChatGPT and using AI to create course content, and she was so pissed. Yeah. She said she wants her tuition back, and because the professor was secretly using AI to create his course materials, when he himself was asking that the students don't use AI. So I think it's the hypocrisy more than anything that really ticked her off, and I don't blame her.
I like it.
The professor ended up saying, He later admitted to using ChatGPT and Perplexity. He did admit to it. The school defended him, and he said, "Look, I could have been more transparent about it." And
can we have him on the show and ask him, and he can have AI answer questions.
That's right.
I love it. That's great.
That's great. So there you go. I think that's a dollar one for AI once again. $1 lost for everybody else.
All right. So here's for AI.
Yeah.
And here's for the world.
Some wisdom.
But I like this one better. We've been a positive.
Yeah, that's a fun one. Yeah.
You like the old-fashioned ring? Okay.
I like the old-fashioned ring. I'm an
Right.
old-fashioned guy, John. You know how it goes.
Cha-ching, cha-ching.
Guys, it's always good to see both of you. To all our fans, have a wonderful day. To our David, he will be back next week.
He will.
He will be back because they ran out of oil. They can't lather him anymore, the Naked Tahitian boys. But he'll be back next week. And then I think at the end of the month, we have a guest. And that guest is?
Actually, who do we have? Yes, Anthony Asbury.
Sure.
Talking about UBI, talking about universal basic income as a digital prison.
Nice.
As a digital prison. So it's a contrarian view
from
contrarian view on universal basic income, which Guy Standing is a big proponent of that. We've had him on the show. And now we're going to get the other side of that to say, you know what? Don't buy into it.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, that'll be an exciting show.
Careful. That'll be a good show. Yeah.
That'll be a good show.
Definitely.
Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll be back next Friday live. Saturday is the rebroadcast, wherever you get your podcasts or here on YouTube. And we'll see everybody next week. Have a wonderful rest of your week and good luck. And keep building those fallout shelters. Cheers, everybody.
All right. Peace.